Hey everybody, welcome back to Figure Friday. We have a really awesome statue today, my holy grail of statues. If you saw last week, we did the unboxing for this one, just kind of hung out while I put this together. This week we are reviewing Prime 1 Studios Masterline Nier Automata 2B 1/3 scale statue. This thing is phenomenal. Definitely a holy grail of statue. The best one in my collection by far. We're going to talk about some awesome stuff with this statue today. If you're familiar with Prime 1 Studios, they are the top dog in the resin statue game. She is from Prime 1 Studios. Jen in the corner is also from Prime 1 Studios, and they are phenomenal when it comes to paint, sculpt, the whole concept of the figure. They're the top dog for sure. Let's dive right into these details. So she's a 1/3 scale statue, and she measures a whopping 95 centimeters tall, and in this pose, she is 70 centimeters wide, which is gigantic. She trumps all the other statues in my collection when she's set up next to them on the shelf behind me here. And she weighs a whopping 28 kilograms. She's massive. You really have to have her on a shelf that can support that weight. Something like this, something like a garage shelf. Otherwise, you're gonna be just toppling over with how heavy she is. Now we did get the DX version, meaning she came with a swap out head, the dress version as well, and a swap out arm piece, which we will take a look at here in just a little bit. If we go ahead and take a look at the pose for this statue, this conceptually is a really cool piece. 2B from Nier is very elegant, at the same time very badass, cutting down robots. This statue really captures her awesomeness combined with the grace that she has in the video game. You can really feel that in this pose. Not to mention, the base that she's standing on brings this thing to a whole other level. You guys know I love a really awesome base that accentuates the piece, and this for sure does that. If you're unfamiliar, she's standing on top of some corpses of some robots that she has beaten, as well as the flight suit that you wear at the very beginning of the game and a couple other times throughout the game itself. It's destroyed, everything below her is destroyed, and she's standing victoriously on top of all of those parts and pieces. Really cool statue. Not to mention you've got Pod in the back behind her, which is a fun touch because Pod is always with you during the game. And at the very back of the piece, you actually have a battle suit that 2B wears in the later parts of the game. A very cool concept that has like a homage from different parts of the game, all wrapped into one neat base that 2B is standing on top of. Moving right along to the sculpt of this statue, again, Prime 1 crushes it with the sculpt. You are not gonna find a better statue face, body, and base than Prime 1 Studios. I mean, look at the face on this statue. Both of them are phenomenal. They look so realistic and they have so much expression. Even the masked version, it just encompasses the game exactly. It looks like it was ripped straight from the screen. This thing is fantastic. There's so many folds and puffs in her clothes, and the dress is so flowy on the dress version. Not to mention the swords are super cool. They are huge. Everything about this statue is huge. It's hard to put into words exactly how big it is. I know you're seeing on screen, I'm standing right next to her, but it's just so massive in real life and everything is so detailed. Speaking of the swords, there's so many intricacies in the handles of the swords. You can actually see all of the details in the handle and the guards, the tassel that hangs off the back end. You have the halo around the big sword in the back, which is a super cool touch. And then the textures on this thing are phenomenal. If you move on down to her boots, you can tell that they did a really nice leather texture, which is a high contrast to the skin that it's touching, and then every other part of the fabric as well. Each one has its own unique texture to it, which makes it look really awesome. The black of the fabric is a cotton-esque style fabric. You can actually see that in the texturing, and when it butts up with the silver is nice and smooth, so it's clearly meant to be a different fabric. And if you get close, you can see all of the stitching details, which is super cool. The stitching is really nice and clean. The mesh fabric on her chest is actually see-through, which is really neat. Normally when you see these statues, it's more painted to look see-through. This is a type of resin that you can actually see a little bit into, which makes it way cooler and way more realistic than something that's just painted. Lastly, the sculpt of the base is crazy. There's so much going on. I talked about it a little bit already, but you do see a machine head that she's standing on top of, as well as the parts, the hands, the pieces of her flight suit. All of it is on top of this trash heap base, this pile of machines that she's cut down and topped off with the Yorha logo right in front. This thing is sculpted to perfection. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to drop a like. It helps the channel way more than you may think, and it is completely free. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the paint job for this thing. Paint really makes or breaks a statue, and I can't gush over this enough. This thing looks so good. We'll start at the top down. Her hair is that silvery gray look. It almost looks metallic, just a little bit, just enough to really make it pop in contrast with her skin. Her face is phenomenal. One of the best faces, if not the best face I've ever had in terms of a paint job. Her skin looks so realistic. Her eyes pop, her lips are vibrant without being too in your face, and it just looks extremely realistic, which is super cool for this statue. Moving on down, the black of her shirt is a nice matte color, and it contrasts really well with the shine of the silver bodysuit. And then again, right next to her skin color on her hips, everything looks fantastic. The textures meld really well with the paint job in this one. I have zero complaints about how this thing is painted. Her boots are a shiny leather color, and again, it really contrasts with the thigh highs underneath and in the skin. And you're definitely not escaping the small details on the back with the rivets up the back of her boots and a slight bit of weathering on the shoes themselves when she's standing on top of all these broken robots. Now taking a look at Pod here, he's very clearly been through it. I mean, if you're familiar with this game, a lot of it is set in the desert, and Pod looks like he's got some wear and tear on him. He has very clearly aged and weathered, been out in the elements, and it shows here in this paint job. It looks really nice. Now if you look at the flight suit itself, this thing is in shambles. It has clearly been crashed and burned. There's broken bits where you can actually see the metal of the underside coming through, as well as black char lines where things have been on fire, and broken interior bits are coming out. This thing is really cool. The surface is fully dinged up. It looks like it has been flown through the atmosphere. There's nice touches of red, and the actual decals themselves still look excellent, and they're not cheap stickers. They're really on there. This looks fantastic. The machine head that 2B is standing on looks weathered all to hell. This thing has been through the ringer. Clearly it is rusting, old, like a rust bucket style metal. The full sphere has a bunch of browns and oranges and copper, showing that this has been in the weather for a long time and really rusted through. The battlesuit on the back is a really nice touch. It's got some very cool grays and golds that contrast this piece really nicely, and it's definitely something that it didn't have to do, but it pops and adds a lot to this statue. If you're able to display it in a way that you can see the full 360 of this statue, definitely do it, because there's a lot to look at in the back that you wouldn't get the chance to see any other way. Lastly, the underbase is a pile of garbage, literally standing on a pile of dirt and debris. It's exactly what you would think it would be. 2B is meant to be fighting and killing all these robots, and it's just a trash heap. She's clearly winning, and these things have piled underneath her, and it's a great underbase for all the pieces that are actually showing through. Plus the logo on the front is really cool. Love to see that. The gold halo around the big sword in the back there is actually a like yellow / clear resin, and you can really see they did an excellent job making it look like it's floating. Sometimes it's really hard to get those floating effects. In this case, it was really well done, and it looks like it is actually floating fully around the sword when you're looking at it from a distance. Unless you know where it connects, it's hard to really tell. I normally say no statue is perfect. This one's gonna be hard to actually come up with anything that I don't like. If I had to be really nitpicky, on the bodysuit base, her back foot doesn't quite fit into the spot that it's supposed to, which I actually hear is common for a lot of people. So if you have the DX version in this suit, you may not be getting that back foot in place fully. Otherwise, this statue is freaking perfect. I really don't have any complaints about it. Now, wish list. Of course, you can always wish for more things. If I could really make this statue 100% perfect, I would say 2 things. 1, make the swords out of metal. Swords this big have a tendency to bend and snap, especially when there's a lot of weight on one end up here and it's being pegged in on the bottom right here. That's gonna have a lot of tendency to bend and move if you're moving the statue around. And last thing that you want is to break something on this statue when you're trying to put it in place. Second thing I would say is if you have the DX version, you get a separate lower body and a separate head and a separate arm. It would be really cool to use that somehow by either giving us a small base with a second upper body so you can display both, or a torso where you could set the other head so you could have both heads out at the same time. Kind of like this guy behind me here. he's got a little stand that you can set the second head on right there. All right, that's enough talking from me. I could talk about this statue at length for hours, but we're gonna take a look at this statue, Prime 1 Studios 1/3 scale 2B. Enjoy. If you're a 2B fan like me, then this is definitely a statue that you need in your collection. This is going to be a lifelong statue for me. It's by far the best one I have in my collection, and I don't think anything's ever gonna top it. Don't forget to check out last week's video of the unboxing of this statue. It is very cool and kind of serene to see this thing get put together. And it was pretty easy, which was really nice. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, don't forget to like this video and consider subscribing, and I will see you guys in the next Figure Friday.